Welcome back to Tana Tours. Today I have Andre Foeken with me. Andre is a fellow Tana ambassador and also the CTO at a Dutch health tech company, which means his days are filled with a lot of meetings. So we take a deep dive into how Tana helps him manage all these meetings so that everything gets remembered and nothing slips through the cracks. And I especially love Andre's focus on keeping things really simple, even though he deals with a lot of complexity. As a fellow person who spends many hours a day in meetings, I really enjoyed this tour, and I think you will too. So let's dive in. All right. Well, welcome to Tana Tours, Andre. It's so good to have you.
Thank you. Welcome for having me.
Thank you. This is exciting. I'm excited to jump into your Tana workspace and see everything that you use Tana for. So why don't you take a quick second just to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Andre Foeken. I live in the Netherlands. I'm the CTO of a Dutch health tech company in a very small town near the east of the Netherlands, right on the German border. My background is in computer science, but yeah, mostly now my days are meetings and talking to people. So I've slowly sort of like ended up in a management position. But I still like technology and design, so I try to use sort of like the whole AI stuff and try to make things like feel good to see how can I use this kind of stuff in order to get better at the things I do.
You were telling me before that one of the main users that use Tana for now is just for meetings, and that's
Yeah.
obviously in line with your job, right?
Yeah, the reality of my life is that at least when I'm lucky, half of my day is filled with meetings, and it's a tricky balance. But I think when I got this job, or at least when I slowly merged into it, I in my previous roles I was always able to keep everything in my head,
Yeah.
and I always subscribed to the feeling like if I don't remember it, then it's not important, so it doesn't matter. But then I got into this job, and then if you don't remember to process someone's race or to do something specifically very important that you might still forget in the sort of the chaotic nature of the day, then yeah, that doesn't really hold true. So I sort of forced myself into more structure and process. I initially started in a different knowledge system like Rome.
Mhm.
That was my savior at the time because it saved me from during COVID time just being drowned in all of the stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now, yeah, I have
Now you're
slowly
in Tana.
learned to be a structured person.
Well, I really like that. And how long have you been using Tana for?
Yeah, I had to look that up. Like you shared beforehand that you would ask me that question, so I had to look back at my original Rome backup, and I think I did it
Yes.
in February 2022, so more than a year ago
Oh,
already.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, wow. So you were using Tana before the early release,
I guess so.
official release. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
begging them
fantastic.
for an invite at some point in the Slack, and trying to make some scripts around. At that time, I think the only thing that you could really customize is the importer, and I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time trying to get my Rome stuff into Tana in a way that I was happy with. So I've always
Yeah.
been like customizing my Rome to look a specific way. And for Tana, it already when even when I started, it was like 90% there.
Yeah.
I think I will never be happy with the someone else's definition of how it should look,
Yeah.
but it's quite close, and I'm still happy
Yeah.
that it's still open to customize. So yeah, that's cool. Interestingly enough, for me, the whole customizations they don't really have a rational need. It's more like
Yeah.
when I look at the page without those customizations, it doesn't feel like my home or something like
Yes.
that. So I need
Yeah.
these little things, even if they are absolutely completely useless and don't add any value. But for me, apparently, they're important in order to sort of get motivated about using the system.
I think that's interesting that I definitely feel like one of my things is that if you're going to look at a tool all day, you should want to look
Yeah.
at it, it is your little digital home on the internet, and so I think it's important to kind of give it some personality, which I think
Yeah, and I
your
see you
website
doing the
does.
same with a lot of, like, if you look at the screenshots that you share and the videos, you
Yeah,
add a lot of personal touch there too with the
yeah.
icons and yeah. So yeah, I think it's
I
it's the
I
same.
spend I spend way too long trying to
Finding the
decide
perfect
on
emoji.
icons. Yeah, but
Yeah,
it makes me feel good and it makes me want to use the tool, and I think that's
exactly.
important. Yeah,
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 yeah. That's it for me too. Yeah.
yeah, fantastic. So let's dive in then, and show us your day page, and then we'll go from there.
During the preparation, I already said, like, one of the things I think that happens in these tools is that you structure something and end up never using it.
Yep.
Um, and some of these things, they stick and they add lasting value. And some of these things, they sound like the greatest idea when you start with, and then you completely forget about them. And then months later, you remember, oh yeah, I have that. So the first one is actually one of like those for me. I
Yep.
rarely open it. And basically, in preparing for this session, I opened it for the first time. I thought, oh, that was a great idea. I had that. Why don't I use that?
Yep.
So there's something that is missing. Maybe because, like, one of my gripes with Tana is that you cannot do a default sort of expanded search. So
Yes.
for me, this spotlight thing, it's useless because it doesn't show what's in there all the time. So it
Yeah.
doesn't trigger the same sort of like recognition. I understand the rationale for not wanting to do it and performance and stuff like that.
Yep.
There's a lot of like properly good reasons for it, but in this case, it does sort of hold me back. And the idea
Yeah.
behind this is that um, there's stuff that I can spotlight throughout when I'm sort of thinking or talking to people that I don't want to forget, that I want to
Yeah.
keep track of, and something that just reminds me every morning to do this. And I haven't found a better way to do it than this. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I like it. And one of the things that I like about Tana is that you like all of these could be different things, right? So, you could have a task, you could have a meeting, you could have, because you can tag anything and you can have multiple tags. So you can literally just say, yep, that's something I want to spotlight, make sure it's on the day page, and it just goes there,
and it
which
just
is
goes
really
there.
magic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah. So
fantastic. I,
the,
I have something similar. It's called the hot list.
Ah,
Too.
yes.
Yeah,
I think I stole it, of course, from someone in a video. Let me just remove this tag
probably.
because this is also that happens so much with me that I found all of these cruft in there that sort of built
Yes.
up. So this one had the to do tag, even though I don't think that is needed there, but still, yeah.
And
So
the little stars, are they
yeah,
a CSS hack?
yeah,
As
there's
well?
CSS. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I customize, because what I tend to need is some sort of visual identification for these things. So
Yep.
you see them for things that for tasks that I delegate, for spotlight stuff, for meetings, for people, for things I want to discuss. I need something more of a visual indicator than just the color.
Yep.
So for me, this is important to have it sort of show up here. Plus, it makes it look nice, and again, that's something that I need
Yeah.
in order to stay motivated about using it. Plus,
Yeah. I
it's part
like
of the
it.
motivation that if I work on personal productivity, this is sort of like a driving force. Okay, and then I can add something like this again, and
Yeah.
make it feel good. No.
Yeah. I think it looks nice. I want to use it.
Yeah, and like the core blocks are similar. Like I wanted to
Yep.
have these, and these come from way back. I had them in Rome. At one point,
Yeah.
I made these, and for me now, this is the definition of a start page. And if I don't have these color blocks, then yeah, it's done. Yeah, the inbox is a mix of different things. Some will be blurred, but
Yep.
I'll go through what the basics are. Some are links that I share through the Capture app. This is
Yep.
basically the Tana inbox, by the way. I just put
Yep.
it here as a reference to be standard here. Again, it would be amazing if this were expanded on the get-go, because again, if I forget to expand it, I don't see what's new. Uh, And one of the things that I would love to be added is either an indicator that there's somewhere in the inbox, similar to the spotlight or something like that. Those are the little things that are still missing. But it's a mix of things from multiple sites that are coming in. The main one is the Capture app. But recently I also made a video about how to get your email into Tana, and I've been using that for quite a bit. So setting up email rules and forwarding specific recurring activities that sort of like go to me, like signing a document or stuff I can manually forward. So I get a lot of like, hey, can you provide me with this information, or can you fill in this 360 feedback questionnaire for me? Which at the time I would like, oh shit, I need to flag that or put it in Tana. I would either keep it as unread in my email box and having like this shadow to-do list, which makes me very stressed. And now I can just forward it to Tana and it ends up here in a nicely formatted, I don't even have to write the to-do myself. And that's great. So that's another thing that I really hope that will be just added natively, because it's a little bit too complicated for everyone to do manually. At least I can imagine so, but very valuable. If you can sort of email to Tana and have a command automatically executed on that email, I would be very happy with it.
I mean, I think that's a bit of the magic of, well, I mean, I think it's interesting to see in the last year, AI really, take a central place in productivity, and especially in Tana, and I know you're using Make to make that the email thing happen. But just being able to pass an email through AI and give it a command and say, find the task, format it. It takes so much of that manual burden away from productivity. I think it's probably one of the most exciting things that I use AI for. And I'm in the creator community, and I see all these people having these, huge prompts and trying to write all this copy, and I'm saying, I just want Tana just to extract my tasks for me. That's all.
Yes. That is a core thing. Yeah, I have I did a lot of videos on specific little AI commands. But this is the one that really stuck, that I actively use. And every time I can see something pop up in the inbox automatically, because it was a forwarding rule in my email client, I'm like, okay, this is good. Because it saves me just all of this stuff. It just saves me from doing all this stuff manually. And the other thing I only use AI for is mostly basically definitions of things. Hey, I don't know this term. Can you just tell me what it is? And then usually it's not even a command. It's just a standard ask the standard what is it? The ask AI. That's this one. That's the one I use most of the time.
I use that all the time, and I think like before that, I would maybe jump into ChatGPT or look it up on the internet. And
exactly.
There is something nice about just being in line in Tana and just saying, okay, yes, ask this, ask that. I think I was on a call the other day, and we were. I don't know, there was some question, and so I was sharing my screen, and I'm just here saying, okay, ask AI this. And they were just amazed. They're like, "Wow, what is this tool?"
People are blown away.
I know, yeah. And so, a quick question about the inbox: do you leave things in there, or do you move them out?
No, I just left them in here now because normally I'm quite perfectionistic about this. As soon as I would check it off or if something lands, what I do is one of the things I have on my sidebar is the weekly plan. So basically, all of the stuff that I need to do is in my weekly plan. And basically, once I have an under inbox note here. So whenever here, I can just shift tab anything I finish out of here into that list. And then they end up there. And then they stay there. So basically, that's the way I will go through sort of keeping this somewhat organized. And for the links, eventually, when I get to them, then I'll just remove them or add them to the actual section where I did something with them, or just delete them altogether.
Yeah. Yep. So you just basically move anything into the week plan.
Anything into the week plan, and that's where it stays. Yep.
Yeah. So in terms of your day page, it's not, you don't really use it to kind of like do work in. Is that? What
I
is it?
do, and that's in the next
Okay, yeah.
section. So
Okay, okay.
the last section actually is notes, tasks, and meetings.
Yep,
I tend not to use notes and tasks as much because notes is basically anything I come across in a day that is not part of a meeting.
yep.
And since my life is mostly meetings, it tends to be mostly here. So all of
Yeah,
the stuff I do, if I have a moment to think or stuff like that, it will go into notes. And
yep.
any tasks that somehow pop up, I will just usually put here or in the inbox. I've recently been using more inbox and putting the tasks just
Okay,
there and using the normal format than adding them actually here, because
yeah,
they still get added to the day anyway. So it doesn't
that's right.
matter where they are.
Yeah,
And then the core is these meetings where I just have I use Event Link. That's the tool I wrote to get
yep,
the meetings automatically from my Mac into Tana. So, for instance, if you go to let's say the next Monday, which will be empty, of course, usually I just do get events, and it will just harvest everything from my calendar and add everything in there. And that's the basic idea of how everything is set up.
yeah.
And then I go
And I
in.
think there's a lot of people who ask me about how do I get my meetings into Tana. And personally, I just manually put them in. I'm just one of those people,
I
but I
did
don't
that
have as
for
many
the
meetings as this.
longest time. Yeah,
Yeah,
I did it for the longest time, and there's actually some benefit to doing it manually because I
yeah,
used to have like half an hour in front, and that's basically it's nice to go through every meeting and sort of actively think, hey, okay, this is coming up. So one of the
yeah,
things that I now miss is in automating this is that I have this little bit of like, oh wait, this is coming up and I haven't prepared that properly. And then
yeah,
I don't have this because it's automated. So that's one
yeah,
of the things I'm missing. But as you can see, there's a ton of meetings and every one of
yeah.
these meetings also has attendees. And one of the things I'm doing
Okay.
now that is a little bit more interesting is like if you go into a one-on-one meeting with someone,
Yep.
it will show the personal goals of that person and discussion points and delegated to dos. So it will
Oh wow.
populate automated searches for this person for this meeting. And
Yep.
that's something that is very important to me because even though I could get Tana to get this information every time, it would need to
Mm.
be a manual search that I do every time. And then what ended up happening is I don't do it. So I forget
Yep.
doing it or I'm too lazy to do it. And here it just means like every time I have something I want to discuss, I just mark it as discussed. And the next time I have a meeting with this person, it automatically pops up and I don't forget about it. So basically what happens is when the make API request is an API request to event link. So it gets the events. And then I run commands on all children. And basically these things. So it searches discussion points, it searches personal goals. And if you go into one of these commands, you see what it happens is it's the insert Tana paste. So it inserts a
Right.
dynamic search field, which is a little bit of a workaround. I think I recently made a video about this one in order to
I think
create
I
these
remember that.
dynamic searches. Ideally, this would be like a native Tana function. But the thing
Yes.
missing is this. You cannot make a search currently
Yep.
that goes and says, hey, search for the person that is here dynamically when it's part of the super tag. It just doesn't support
Yep.
it yet. But once it
Yep.
does, then this will be a lot easier. And I would happily throw away all of that complexity in order for this. Yeah. But I'm
Yeah.
very happy that this now works because
I think
this has been a
so.
missing link for me for a long time.
Yeah. One of the things that I talk about a lot is having everything that you need at your fingertips. So like when you're in a meeting,
Yeah,
you don't want to have to be jumping into another section in Tana and trying to gather everything. It's like gather everything together, and then you can be really present on the meeting,
exactly.
knowing
Yeah.
that you've got everything that you need. And then I assume that you then, if there's tasks or actions to be done, you can just add those into the meeting.
Yeah, like so one of these meetings, like you see a lot of these personal goals pop up for people. So one of the
Yep.
things I do, I have quite a few people I sort of like I coach, and then I
Mm-hmm.
have something called a 3P meeting, which is like a person performance and progression meeting. And
Yep.
basically, it's like 2 hours talking about where they want to go with their goals and their career. And
Right.
when I start one of those meetings, it will be automatically tagged. But when I do now
Yep.
one of them, let's see. Um, let's do a meeting with myself. Um, so there's a few things that are pre-populated normally, but if I now do it manually, it won't add them. So
Yep.
if you look at the 3P stuff, we have like this. If I do them manually, search previous meetings. So strangely, I don't have any previous meetings with myself, so it doesn't show up. Um, and it searches the personal goals, which I do have. So
Yep.
basically, but they're not filled for me. So this is the commands that fills these things, and you can see it happening here. And then what I usually do is I create a template because again, these meetings, they follow a standard template. I think I have a command for it, template. Yeah. And it basically inserts the 3P template into the meeting. Basically, these are all the questions that we will go through during the meeting. And what
Right.
happens is that if you put all of this in the super tag, which I did originally,
Yep.
then when you change the super tag, this also changes. So previous meetings
Oh,
change the structure, and that's not
got it.
what I want in this case. Plus, you cannot destroy things, so you cannot remove a question that you don't tackle in that meeting. So they're always there. So a
Yep.
template is sort of like a way to decouple this. And what
I
I
like
do
that.
during the meeting, eventually we will come across a personal goal, like, I don't know, drink more water. And then I just mark it as a personal goal. And it automatically comes there because it is also
Great.
automatically linked to me as I tag it.
And is that that's in the personal goals super tag? You set that up?
Yes. So the personal
Yep.
goal
Let me
super
go
tag
back to.
just is sort of like you have this auto initialized to
That's right. Yep.
ancestor with this thing. So I think there's something like, hey, find the value of this field and initialize it. And that's really
Yep.
cool because sort of this takes away so much of the manual tagging here. So basically,
Yeah.
I set this up, I think, a year ago. I don't even like the first time I remember that this is actually
Wow.
happening is during this conversation because normally I just, yeah, this magically happens.
And I think, there's obviously, I mean, not that there's definitely a lot of thought that goes into, how you set this up. And but I'm assuming that like some of that has just been built over time. So as you
Yeah.
do meetings, you think about it and you think, oh, I could make this happen or I can make that happen.
Yeah, it would be amazing if this happened or this happened. So yeah, for the to-do
Yep.
stuff, I basically have three things. I have like a task, which just ends up being a to-do. I have a
Mm-hmm.
discuss with, which automatically ends up in my one-on-one
Yep.
meetings, and I have a delegated to, which basically means that um, I have asked someone else to do this, but I feel
Okay.
responsible for still sort of knowing that it still happens because, well, sometimes you ask someone to do it and it still
Yep.
doesn't happen. And then I want to be able to sort of remember, hey, maybe in my next meeting with this person,
Mm.
I can ask what the status is or whatever. So those are the three
Yep.
major things that I use there. I started structuring stuff in projects and it never stuck for me. So for
Yeah.
me, the main structure is just, well, one big list and it all goes in there. And every week, in the beginning of the week, I go through the big list. I
Yeah.
take out what I'm going to do that week, and every day I take out what I'm going to do every day, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And that's the basis of how I use Tana. Um, all of the other stuff, yeah, I keep playing with it, but I don't
Yeah.
actively use.
Yeah, and I think I think that's interesting, and we chatted briefly about this before. It's like like you tend to. There's lots of cool stuff that goes on in the community, and people sharing this and that, and I end up doing the same. I'm like, oh, that's such a cool idea, and then maybe use it a couple of times, and then it kind of just it disappears into the
Yeah,
background somewhere, and
I think the thing I
yeah.
spent the most time on was this. Like I in the
Wow.
beginning for Rome, I was doing so much Zettelkasting and stuff like this,
Yep.
and I spent so much time trying to get this the way it looked in Rome with all of the CSS,
Right.
and I rarely use it. So yeah, I think we talked about this before. Like yeah, this is the first time I even thought about it again.
I've always found, sometimes there's just seasons for things. So
Yeah,
sometimes I'm really into my Zettelkasten, my notes, and I'm there's just so much kind of exploration. And other times I'm just, I don't know, reading books and enjoying that. And I
that
think
is
that's
true because
important.
I do. When you do look back on it, it doesn't age, and that's kind of cool. Like all of the
Yes.
other stuff in my roam aged. Like I don't
Yeah.
care if I remove all of my old meetings; they're no longer relevant. But this,
Yes.
it doesn't age. So this is kind of cool. In the fact that yeah, even if you don't look at it for like 8 or 9 months, and you come back and you think, oh yeah, that was cool. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're right. It goes in phases and in
I
ups and
think so.
downs. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, great. And so, is there anything else that you want to show?
I think this is mostly how I go through my day.
I think so.
I have my laptop with me during most of my meetings, which is
Yep.
tricky, I think, because
Mm.
I always have to sort of tell people in front that I'm not actually on Slack typing to other people or something like that. Because now my whole sort of like when I'm in a meeting, I have to write down the stuff. It's starting to become like what I need in order to process, and it
Yep.
helps me a lot in order to sort of like see structure and type along with the meeting. But it
Yep.
also it's tricky when the meeting is it doesn't feel like the right fit.
Yep.
So
Right.
in one of these personal development meetings, it's not a natural fit to have the laptop in there and me typing.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it does make me ask better questions.
Okay.
So in the end, it's a net positive for the conversation. But I still
Yeah.
like in front of these meetings, I always tend to explain a bit like, okay, why do I do this and why do I need it?
Mm.
Um,
That's good.
because it tends to be like I think one time I forgot and someone said like, "Oh, he's such an asshole." The only time he was talking to me, he was just typing along, like he was probably doing his emails or something like that. And I was like, "Oh no!"
Oh
So yeah, so
no.
now I'm very sensitive to being very clear about this to say this is part of my process, and I can
Yeah.
stop it if people don't want it. If it becomes emotional, I will close the laptop, of course.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
then
Got
then
it.
there's no need for the barrier there. But
Yeah.
the whole goal of this is to be able to for me to be more effective and actually do something with what they're telling me in a meeting.
Yes. And do you use any kind of audio capture
I
in the
would
meetings?
really love to, but
Yeah.
this falls in sort of the same category.
Yeah.
Like I would love to record these meetings and see what we can do with it, but I
Yeah.
feel it's not appropriate.
Yeah.
So of course you can ask for consent, and then there's some other stuff that gets in there. Like, yeah, how do you get a clear, good audio recording of two people speaking and have
Mm.
that transcribed in a way that actually makes sense? I don't think we're
Yeah.
there quite yet. There's some stuff that is getting near.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know a lot of people who do in-person meetings anymore. So much
For
of
me,
my work is
it's
just
a
online.
mix.
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
it's a mix. Like we have like at our company, we don't really care where people work from. They can come to the office or they can
Yeah.
work from home. So what you see is that you get this balance of people doing like 2 days at the office, 2 3 days at the office. That seems to be the sweet spot for most people.
Yeah.
I tend to be at the office more days because I want when someone is at the office and they want to speak to me in person, I would prefer to be there in
You want
person.
to be there. Yeah.
Plus,
That makes
I
sense.
seem to get more energy from being within the office than in my home.
Mm.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't struggle with it as much during the COVID time, but
Mm.
now when I have the choice, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I think one of the things that really strikes me when I look at your day page is just the simplicity of it. It's
yeah,
not overcomplicated. I mean, now I'm looking at my day page and I'm like, oh gosh, but I this spotlight thing I think is really great because so many. I think we're trying to add so many different kinds of things sometimes. So we've got
mm,
fields for this and fields for that. Whereas like sometimes all you need is just a simple
is
tag to get
focus. Yeah,
something. Yeah, just to
yeah.
get something to where it needs to go. And I think there's a real simplicity to this that I love. Yeah,
And I think everyone has their own sense of what works for them. I think that's the nice things about these personal knowledge systems is that they finally offer a set of flexibility. Like yeah, exactly like I said, is if it's going to be the thing that I stare at. One time I think I have this tool that sort of tracks how much hours I am doing in which task. And if you look
yeah,
at Tana, it's insane. the amount of hours that is open,
Yeah.
it is not natural. It's not healthy. But yeah, it's most of my working day. Am I
Yeah.
looking at this? It might not be that I'm actively in it, but I am
Yeah.
definitely in it. So yeah, exactly as you said. Then it better be something that I feel comfortable with and it feels my own. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, I mean, I probably spend 80 to 90% of my day in Tana.
Yeah.
And you
Similar.
know, I think I think it's nice to be able to have everything that I need all the time, like just
Exactly.
accessible. And I think going back to having those meetings and just having everything that you need within the meeting to be able to at any time bring up with somebody. Like I can imagine if you're on a one-on-one, you can say, oh, actually we talked about this goal a while ago. Like, I mean, I know, like, if I bring things up in meetings, I probably have forgotten them like 6 months, 6 months from now, or that kind of thing. So it's nice to have that record, and even just to be able to, you see it captured, and then it goes to exactly where it needs to go, and like you don't have to do any of that. I sit on a lot of meetings, and I remember having to, you have to like have some time after and process everything and make
Exactly.
sure it's going to
Yeah.
the right place. And this just feels like there's a reason that you can sit on meetings all day, because
Yes.
everything's going to where it needs to go, and it feels very in flow.
And I think one of the things is that I always sort of respected people who remembered things and acted on things, like
Yeah.
because I am definitely not. My natural state is to forget everything as soon as it hits me. So I was always surprised by someone who would then come back to me a week later. Yeah, we discussed. I did that, and I was like, oh wow, I even forgot I asked you that, or that we discussed it at all, or
Yeah.
basically who you are sometimes. But so the problem is that how do you sort of like get that? And I think like having Tana be able to sort of enable that for me makes it very addictive for me. That
Yeah.
I am able to be that person, even though I'm naturally not.
Well, this was really great. I have loved kind of seeing, and especially as a fellow meeting person, I really enjoyed seeing how you get all those meetings done. So thank you for joining me. Um,
Very welcome.
if people want to find you, where can they do that on the internet?
I think the easiest one is just to go on Twitter or on
Yep.
X as it's now called.
Yes.
Yeah, my username I don't think is even if I pronounce it in Dutch, it will probably not be understandable. But it's I'm sure that you can find some way to share it somewhere,
We'll
maybe
we
in the
will share
comments or
we'll
so.
share the link below. Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us, Andrew. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, this has been really fun.